This is Dr. Sorah Dubitsky, and welcome to another episode of Birds, Bees, and Beyond. We talk about sex very frankly, openly, and from a scientific perspective. And it's real conversations, real talk, real people. My partner in this project is Caro.
My name is Caro, and I'm a student at Florida International University, and I'm currently studying psychology. And thanks to me taking a course on the psychology of sexual behavior, I was able to meet the lovely Dr. Sorah. And today we're here because we wanted to cover the subject of disabilities and intimacy. And so, because of that, we have a guest speaker today, and her name is Maria. And without further ado, if you can introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, my name is Mariadeliz Santiago. I am an influencer. I do beauty content, but I also do disability advocacy content because I was born with a limb difference. I also studied social work, so I have my master's in social work. So I was a social worker previously, which a lot of people don't know. So I'm super excited to be here and open up the conversation a little bit more about sexuality and disability.
I teach sex education. I've been doing it for 19 years. And there's a section we go over called sexual dysfunction. And part of that section includes what happens with people who have disabilities. And from a sexual perspective, people with disabilities aren't even, I don't even know. And so that's why you're here to educate us on how do people with disabilities think about sex, and the inspiration for that. There was a story a long time ago, I'll make this quick, about a writer named Mark O'Brien. And Mark O'Brien had polio, and he was paralyzed from the neck down, but he was still able to have erections. And he wanted to have sex. Anyway, there's a scientific explanation for that, but he was capable of having intercourse.
Mhm.
And the story was made into a movie called The Sessions. And I had the original article, and it was just really inspiring about what he went through and how he was able to work with a sex surrogate to learn how to enjoy his body, even though he couldn't feel anything. So that was the inspiration behind this, and let's do something to change people's consciousness, open up the idea that people with disabilities are fully functional and capable of having sex.
Considering the questions that we had prepared to ask you today, one of the most important ones that spoke to me and spoke to you as well is what do you think people tend to assume about your sex life that isn't actually true?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that people tend to assume is that people with disabilities don't even have a sex life. I think people assume that we're not desirable because we have a disability, that we're not being sexually active in the way that our non-disabled counterparts are. And it's really frustrating because that couldn't be further from the truth. Just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you don't want to have sex or you don't feel like the desire to have sex. And I think it's also like really important to note that like disabilities, I think that disability is actually a pretty vague term because so many disabilities look different for everyone. And so I think just the human body in general, just can look really different for everybody. So I think that depending on what the disability is or what people's preconceived notions of disabilities are and that specific disability, they might think like it's not possible to have sex. Or if it is, it's probably, it's not fun, it's not cool, or they're struggling, right, in some sort of way, which isn't necessarily true. So I think that's like the biggest thing that I feel like people obviously think that it's not happening or that we don't want it to happen. And then also that people just don't find us desirable. You know what I mean? Which also
Yeah.
isn't true.
So do you mind sharing what your disability is?
Yeah, so I was born with a condition called ulnar mammary syndrome. It's pretty rare. I think there's only been like 100 cases recorded like worldwide.
Mhm.
So it mainly affects my limb difference. So that's why I have a limb difference. It's due to a genetic mutation. There are other things that it causes too that people can't really see. So I was born without certain like sweat glands. So I don't like sweat. I don't really perspire, which is also something which I get a lot of heat intolerance from. It's like a form of like dysautonomia. So I often can't really regulate my body temperature like somebody else can. So that's like something that people can't really see because it's like
Mhm.
invisible. And then I was also born with a heart condition. It's called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. This one is much more common. It's an arrhythmia. So I was born with it, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was like 22, and I became symptomatic
Wow.
at 16. Yeah, that is crazy, right? To find out at 22 that you have this heart condition you were born with, but I had no idea that I was like living with
Hmm.
it. I was just like
Hmm.
going through life, like not even knowing this is a thing. So that was like something that really changed my life, really, because it was so, I want to say shocking. I don't know. I used to think like, I always think like God will never give you more that you can handle. And I used to be like, that's my limb difference. I'm going to just go through my life with a limb difference. And that's going to be my thing. And then when I got hit with like finding out I had a heart condition and other things, I was like, oh, there's going to be more. Okay, great. so, so
So
what,
your attitude is so upbeat.
yeah.
And has it always been that way? You have this innate joy, this innate radiance. That I think that's why you're such a successful influencer. You really model what you believe.
Yeah.
And how did that develop?
Yeah.
Then we'll get back to sex, but you're
Totally. I mean, I could weave relationships into this one a little bit. But yeah, I think for me, confidence is key. I think in my 30s now, I'm 30, I have such a good sense of self and good sense of confidence, but it didn't happen overnight. You know what I mean? People view people with disabilities, especially visible disabilities, there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of like bullying. There's a lot of people that just treat you differently. So I
Mm,
definitely struggled with that when I was younger. And then as I got older, and I think I got into my 20s and I left high school and middle school, and like I went into a more mature step in my life, I think that's when I finally started to like gain like confidence and really I think there just comes a point in your life where you're like, are you going to let this define you? And in some ways, yes, my disability does define me, and I'm totally okay with that because I love my disability and I love who it makes me who I am. And I think that's really cool. I really do love my disability.
mm.
But am I going to be haunted by what people perceive of me forever? Or am I going to break through from that and start to actually take these perceptions and change them and rewire them so that people don't have this control over me? So I
Wow,
think
that's great.
yeah, so I think that just happened through just experiencing life, as you get older, even with all of the, negativity or the, experiences that you might have had
Hmm.
or in when you were younger. I just think you're like, you know what? No, I don't want to let this control me. I want to control the narrative myself, you know? And so, yeah, I don't really know exactly where that came from. I just remember I was just frustrated with that in my life. And I was like, I am the only person that's going to make this better for me. I can either live in this sorrow and live in this like disappointment as far as like people that have disappointed me because of the way they viewed me, or I can go out there and just prove everybody wrong. I don't know how I got the confidence. Don't even ask me because I sometimes I'm like, I don't necessarily know that there was a specific time period where it's like, okay, this switched. I think it just was like it had its ups and downs, and as I got older, I think with life experiences, you just become more confident.
That's really inspirational, and I think that it shows that you have a lot of resilience. And similar to like how I was looking for you, like it's funny, I was just scrolling through Instagram, like Sora mentioned this idea of having a video like on disabilities and like, their
Yeah.
sex life, their intimacy. And I was just like, that sounds like a really good idea. Like I need to look
Uh,
into it now because obviously like we don't really have, I mean, I don't know about Sora. I don't think we have any at least visible disabilities.
Uh,
I was looking on Instagram and I looked up the hashtag of like disability rights, disability advocacy.
yeah.
And your account was one of the few that came up. And I remember just like seeing videos of like you doing content creation. And I was honestly like really impressed, not because I don't think that someone with a disability would not be capable of it, but just
Yeah.
because of how much your beauty shined through like all of your videos. And not
yes.
even just physically, but like
Yeah.
intrinsically. Like when you can feel someone who's like confident and can just give you that good, kind energy, like that a lot of people just don't carry nowadays.
Yeah.
Like seeing that made me realize like, this is the girl. Like we gotta like interview.
Oh,
And
I'm so happy I'm here.
Of course. No, we're happy you're here.
As a social media influencer, like, yes, I do beauty content and fashion content, but I think my goal at the core of what I'm creating is opening up these different conversations about disability and changing that narrative. And so anytime I get an opportunity to do that, I'm like, let's go, let's do it.
Have you had to unlearn any standards about like what sex or intimacy is supposed to look like, similarly to how a lot of like younger people like looked at porn and thought that was what sex was supposed to look like?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, growing up, I was like growing up in a very religious family. So first of all, like sex was not even something that we like really talked about, right? It was like taboo. It was like you don't have sex until you're like married and Jesus and all these things and blah blah blah. So yeah, I think for me, it just wasn't something that I considered for a really long time. As you get older and as your body changes, you start to feel different things, if you know what I mean. Like, especially when you're like in your late teens and you start to think like, oh my gosh, is it okay to have these feelings? Is it okay to have these desires? Is this like holy? Is it like not holy? And then I think you just get older and I'm just like, you know what? I want to make these decisions. Like if I want to have sex and if I and not and if I'm growing up to be a person that has like this sort of spiritual relationship instead of like this like super tight knit relationship with God, then let that be. So I think for me it was something that we didn't really talk about a lot. And then I also think that porn, that's a big one. I think a lot of people struggle with that one because I think porn just sets these like unrealistic
Mhm. Yeah,
expectations of what sex should look like or what it should
right.
be like. And I don't know that that's like exclusive to people with disabilities per se. I think we're all kind of struggling with that. I know I've struggled with that. I prefer having sex with a more like intimate, like emotional connection attached to it. Not that there's anything wrong with like just having sex to have sex because I've done that too. It's not my preferred thing, but for some people it is. So I think for me, definitely with things like that, I think it also reinforces that people with disabilities are undesired because I mean, I've definitely watched porn. I don't know if I've ever even seen people with disabilities on porn sites. Like, have you even seen that? I've never even seen that.
I don't think so, no.
You know what I
And
mean? Which I think is interesting.
what porn does, the more porn people watch, it sets up a script
Yeah.
in their heads that this is what sex is supposed to look like. And then when they're doing the real thing or having the real thing, they compare that to what the script is in their head.
I don't think I ever even grew up watching people with disabilities in movies and like sex scenes and romantic scenes and like you just don't even see that. And I think that gives into this idea and this stereotype that people with disabilities aren't having sex, that we're
Mhm.
not desirable, that it's not possible. As you were mentioning that film earlier, and I've never even watched it. I'm definitely gonna watch it now. I would love to see more representation in media and in film of people with disabilities falling in love,
Mhm.
sex, like let's do the disabled sex scenes, like because it's
Mhm.
it's happening. Disabled people are having sex. We're not having sex.
So one of the issues that comes up in my classes
Mm.
is, should people with disabilities be allowed to hire sex workers?
Oh, I'm for it. Listen, I'm not, even when it comes to sex work outside of this, like I think your body, your choice. I don't even think that it should be illegal personally. I don't see a problem with it. I think it's
Mhm.
your body, it's your choice. Obviously, if there's, other things happening that are like not healthy to the person behind the scenes and things that are,
Mhm.
that's a little different. But I think as far as sex work goes and as far as this topic goes, I don't see anything wrong with it. If you want to hire a surrogate to better understand your body and understand
Exactly,
pleasure, let's
exactly.
do that. Let's explore that. Absolutely. I'm totally for that. Because the reality is for some people with disabilities, that stigma that people have about people with disabilities, it can make dating hard. It can make intimacy difficult. Like finding someone who's going to understand you and just accept you is hard, and like those desires, those sexual desires don't go away. And I don't know about you guys, but like if I needed a sex surrogate or if I wanted to have sex, like for me it's like I don't also want to wait until I meet like the perfect person or like that. Who knows when that's going to happen or if that would
Exactly.
happen. I don't know when that's going to happen. All I
Right.
know is that I'm living this life, and I think like if I want to have sex and I want to explore my body, I'm going to find a way to do it because I got one life to live, and baby, I'm going to live it.
It's just funny that you mentioned like your body. Actually, I was wondering like when do you feel most connected to your body, or what helps you like feel most like in tune with yourself. Like for example, I think I went out for dinner with a friend like this past week, and I we saw two girls in the park, and they were like listening to like this really like sensual music and kind of just like dancing for each other. And I was just thinking like wow, like that's so like beautiful for them to be able to like appreciate their bodies like that. And
Yeah.
I was just wondering like for you, like obviously growing up, you had said that, you didn't grow that confidence overnight. What helped you feel most connected to yourself, your body, your sensuality?
Yeah. I think one thing that helped me really feel like connected to my body, I think the more you explore your body, the more connected you feel to it. And I think allowing yourself to go through that exploration process is important, because when I was younger, the idea of having sex, outside of this, outside of marriage or anything like that was always seemed like be shamed of doing.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I think when I feel most connected to my body, I think is when I feel the most confident, right? You know what I mean? I think when I put on, as you were talking about, like these two girls that are listening to music, I feel like when I put on that cute outfit or when I put on that lingerie or I put on that fun music and I'm able to just kind of like, when I'm in like a relaxed environment and I feel like I can be myself, then I feel the most connected to my body in that way. Um, you know what I mean? And that can be either because the person that I'm with at the time makes me feel secure. I think security is a big thing for me. I think when I feel secure in any environment, I think that helps me feel more connected to my body. As far as like, if this person makes me feel secure, if I feel comfortable being myself around them, then I feel more secure. So I think for me, that's like a really big thing for me. Also, I just think like, I think as I become more confident in my body, you know what I mean? Like when I started to like accept my disability and things like that. I've also like my weight is also fluctuated a little bit when I was younger, and sometimes I wouldn't feel that confident or or when I start to like go to the gym, and not necessarily to like change the way my body looks, but just whenever I do things to feed myself inside and outside, because I think the inside matters a lot too. Like when you feel more confident, I think you're just like you allow yourself to do more as far as intimacy goes too. You know what I mean? Like the more confident you feel in your body, I feel like the more adventurous you want to be with your sex life, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
no, of course.
I have a book coming out, but it's about intimacy. And when you hear the word intimacy, you think sex. Okay,
Mhm.
but what I write about is like the spiritual dimension of intimacy.
Yeah.
That the sacred space between people, like a relationship is born in the space between people. It's not
Right.
in me, it's not in you. It's together we're creating something new, and it's based on, and maybe I'll just say simply heart to heart,
Yeah.
as intimacy. How do you experience intimacy in that vein? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally. I feel like, in a spiritual sense, I think when I'm able to just talk about my vulnerabilities open with somebody, I feel really connected to them. And we're able to be like really vulnerable and really emotionally available. And I think when somebody is really able to tap into their younger self, I find that like really attractive. If you feel like you can let your inner child really glow, that to me means that you are emotionally secure if you're able to tap into the younger you and sort of just like have fun, but also you're just not afraid to run away from these like difficult like conversations. I think that adds to intimacy for sure. It gives me more emotional security. For example, I've been on, I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with my Instagram, but I've been writing about my dating life since being single on Substack. If you guys haven't read it, check out my Substack, okay?
I have Substack also, so you can
Oh
check out
my God,
mine.
yes. Oh
Yes,
yes,
I
I'm gonna
definitely
definitely follow you.
Substack. Yes, definitely. I love Substack.
Yeah, so for example, I went on a date a while back and I felt like I had like this intimate moment with this guy because and I didn't ask him to tell me this at all. But obviously with my disability it's visible, right? So you can definitely just like see it. I don't ever try to hide it when it comes to relationships or dating. It was I'm very comfortable in myself. But I was on this date and he was like, I was born with a condition. And I was like, "Oh, really?" Because his not that he has a disability, but the condition that he had is not visible. So I couldn't see, oh, we were on this date. We weren't even talking about it, but he's like, yeah, I had this condition and I was born with it. And then I think we went on a second date and he kind of opened up a little bit more about it. And so this condition was called pectus evacutatum. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Basically, what it is like, I guess it happens in males. It's like their chest wall is like sunken in. They're like, it's like born sunken in. And so they need like, depending on how severe it is, they need surgery to like repair it and bring the chest wall outwards. So he was basically telling me like, yeah, my entire childhood I was like really insecure about it. And it was just like, such it really affected my confidence. And I was like, oh, I was like, you trust me enough to tell me that? You know what I mean? That's kind of sweet.
Mhm.
And then I felt like, okay, maybe I can talk about my disability. Because, when I go on dates, I'm just like, let's just talk about other, like, we don't need to talk about my disability on the first or second date, like, whatever.
Mhm.
But like, if you're opening up to me and you feel like you are comfortable enough to share that information with me, I can sort of reciprocate a little bit and I want to give back a little bit. And I think for me, that felt like a really intimate moment because I was like, oh, this is cool and interesting. And it was just like, and then we connected on that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I know what it's like to, be not as comfortable in your body and not as confident in your body. And like for me, I just was like, he's like, yeah, he's like, I have like scars. I had surgery when I was 19 and maybe you'll see them. And I'm like, okay. I think for me, it didn't really matter, but I felt like we had this level of intimacy there, which made me feel really connected to that person. And then when we did have sex, like it was really good. I don't know, but because that was a conversation that we had before. So I guess like for me, yeah, I do think that emotional security with someone and being able to be vulnerable with them and just like share really important things about you with them, to me, that's attractive. To me, that's a turn on. And yeah, it was pretty good. So yeah, I feel like that for me is something that like I feel like I need to be connected to you in a deeper way in order for me to feel like we're connected and the intimacy is really there. That makes sense.
One of the things in this book is the 7 principles of intimacy.
Mm.
That it's so that'll be in the book. But vulnerability is number 2.
What's
And
number one? I'm so
number
curious.
1 is trust.
Mm.
You,
Yes, that's
uh,
big.
yeah, trust is big. Because you're opening up. That's what intimacy
Mhm.
is. Real, and
Yeah,
you can have sex without intimacy, as
totally.
I'm sure we're all aware of. That way. And you mentioned emotional connection, and that's another one of these principles of intimacy. But it's so much richer
Yeah.
to have sex with that connection, especially for women. Yeah,
Hmm.
I hear that a lot from women, not so much men. Oh, unless they're in love. If man's in love, then intimacy is
Yeah.
really important.
I know. This is really funny because although this sounds like a really great story that I just told about this guy, it actually ends pretty horribly.
Oh, oh, well.
One thing I will say about emotional intimacy is like I did feel that and in a way I kind of wish we didn't have that moment because it feels like, was it real? It was real for me.
Oh, yeah.
Was it real
All
for
right.
you?
So
You
I'll
know what
just
I
say
mean?
it was him, not you.
Yeah, so that emotional intimacy is important, but it also sucks because it's like, am I crazy? Was I feeling more than I was I feeling this intimacy that maybe wasn't there? Or like, was this fabricated intimacy, if that makes sense? I don't know.
The important thing is that we all know that at the end of the day, I think he was missing out.
Exactly. It could bring up fear also if he, in him
Mm,
to be that open and to be that vulnerable.
maybe.
And especially if he had his own issues going on, it sounded like his own issues going on. And
Yeah.
and there's also the idea of being detached from
Mm,
your emotions not even knowing how you feel.
One of my last questions, before asking that, I wanted to mention a movie that I actually watched a couple years back called Me Before You. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it is about a woman who her name's Louisa in the movie. I think it's like made in England because they have like British accents. And she's basically the caretaker of this man who was in a motorcycle accident and ended up being fully paralyzed. I'm pretty sure from the neck down, or if not the entire body. And he was really, really attractive. The whole point of why I'm mentioning this is because in the movie, towards the end, she was catching feelings for him, he was catching feelings for her. They were like falling in love with each other. But yeah, the whole part of the movie that I wanted to mention was that it was a scene where like they were in the bed and she was kissing him because he was laying down because
Mhm.
he can't move. And I think it got to the point where like he started crying and he was like telling her like, I can't do this because she wanted to like have sex with him and he couldn't because of a condition that he had called quadriplegic. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but
Quadriplegic.
yes, exactly. Well, that basically just means that he has a loss of desire for sexual intimacy. And in the case of the movie, he refused to her to, even attempt to have sex because he claimed that he couldn't be enough of a real partner for her, quote unquote. So he basically felt as if he was pushing her away from like meeting better men in this case, from, fulfilling her sexual life. And in this case, it was kind of sad, because they were both crying and she was like, just in awe because like she really did fall in love with him, even though she was his caretaker. But just looking back on this movie and like the whole meaning behind it, just leads me to want to ask you, like, if you knew someone who was maybe like around my age or a little younger, like a teenager, and they had recently found out that they had a disability or they had it since they were born, but they just started thinking about what their intimacy would look like or what their sex life would look like in the future, what would you tell them as like a big sister piece of advice as to like don't let people
Yeah,
mess with your head about what sex is supposed to look like,
right.
or, being viewed as something or someone that isn't worth having good sex?
Yeah, totally. I think for me, the biggest thing that I would say is allow yourself to be loved. Like,
Mm.
just it's very simple, but it's very impactful, because I think there will be times where people are showing you that love, and maybe because of the things that you've experienced in your past, you might want to push those people away. And I would say embrace that. Embrace the love that people want to show you because you are deserving, just as deserving as anyone else. And I think I would also say, you know, just because you have a disability doesn't make you undesirable. There are some people that are not going to see you for you, and that just goes for everybody, disabled or not. But there are people out there that will want you for who you are, and there's in all your aspects, right? Disability, with disability, without disability, like that's a part of you. It's not going to matter to them. Like it is, but not in the beginning. Like they're just going to see you for you, and if someone has shown interest and desire in you and they want to love on you, just allow that. There's so many possibilities when it comes to intimacy and love, and unless you allow yourself to explore that, you never know what could be. So I would just say, like, simply give yourself the space to receive love.
That's beautiful. I love the way you phrased that. And it definitely does take a lot more than 1 day or 2 days to, find that self-love. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate you for telling us about that and telling us how you feel and your overall journey.
We are all worthy of being loved.
Mhm.
And that's really important.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Sure.
All right, have a
And
great day.
Caro, as always, it's a joy working with you. So,
Thank you. Thank you, of course. Likewise. Okay, have a great day, ladies.
okay. See you guys.